What if this all works out? What if I can do it?
Yeah.
What if I can create the most truthful, authentic, beautiful life I can imagine?
Like everything is 50-50. So if you are going to say that this could happen, then what's the flip side of that?
Yes.
This also could happen.
There's what is useful and what is not useful. That's why we don't say like negative emotions and positive emotions.
Yeah.
It's resourceful emotions and unresourceful emotions.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Mapuana Reed Show. Today we have Savannah, and she is going to talk to us all about From Your Pain Comes Your Purpose and also NLP.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Mapu. It's so cool to be here. I got to meet you right when you were, what was it? You had just launched your first episode.
Oh, really? Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So it's amazing to be like now in the studio with you and here
Yeah.
today. A little bit about me. I am Savannah Lani Murray. I'm the founder of Savannah Lani Coaching, which offers brand and personal story coaching to people making meaningful changes that maybe make them a little uncomfortable, that push them to go into unknown territory, that they have hesitancy around, but they have this knowing inside them that this is what they're meant to do next. Because those are the greatest opportunities to write your next best chapter. Mm-hmm. And I facilitate you in writing that chapter and creating that story by combining storytelling, the art of storytelling, to get you really aligned to your future. What's my vision? Where am I going? Right? Mm-hmm. And then leveraging Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP, so that you can start to understand what limiting stories you've written in the past and how to rewrite them, how to change those narratives.
Maybe tell what, and because I don't even know what, like, to me it just sounds like a bunch of big words. What exactly is NLP?
So Neuro-Linguistic Programming, it's similar to so many modalities in that we're looking at how to bring whatever's in your subconscious mind up to your conscious mind so that you can work through it. So the way I describe it very simply is someone comes to me and they say, I really want this, but I keep doing this. And we're helping you to bridge the gap to understand the disconnect between what you believe, which is, I believe I really want this, but then how you're behaving. And you're like, I say I want this thing, but then I'm still acting in this other way that's not aligned to that. What's going on there? And it's usually because there's a conscious belief, there's a cognitive understanding, but there's something in your body, something in your subconscious, something in your past. There's a story there that says, you know, all the old stories that we all have to work through ongoing, like I'm not worthy enough, I'm not valuable enough, I can't do this, I can't show up. That's for other people, that's not for me, right? All of those stories, neuro-linguistic programming, just like EFT, just like breath work, just like somatic work. So all of these modalities, just like EFT, just like somatic work, just like breath work, they're ways of reconnecting to your inner knowing and then healing through whatever's blocking that, whatever's coming up for you that's keeping you from going where you want to go.
It's kind of like you go into the gap, right? So then there's this old programming of who you are, the type of person you are, what you do, but then yet there's a person of another person, or there's you, and you just like, I want this, and I want this type of life, and this is all the things that I want, but you're like in this gap of like, I want to let go of this, but this here is so safe, and this is all I know, and it's all the wiring of like your story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
but you haven't written this story yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can't go after something you haven't felt and understood yet. Like people who've listened to Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks a lot about the familiar feeling that is you, right? We get addicted to the familiar feeling of our old story.
Yeah.
Because even if we don't like that story, it's the story we know.
It's safe. It's all we know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So part of the work I do with the storytelling side is getting you really familiar with this new story. Like coming up with, what does it look like? How does it feel? What do you hear? So you're completely familiar with that new story. And once you're familiar with what you're going toward, then you can start to do the work of releasing what's no longer serving you.
So it's like you help them bridge, like build a bridge, basically. Yeah. I like
Yeah.
that, with steps on how to get there and what to do.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
why I went through the whole coaching, like, what's my niche? Niche down, niche up, whatever. What is it? And now I'm like, my niche is humans
Human beings.
who are looking to make meaningful and often messy shifts and transformations in their lives, right? It's anyone who says, I'm ready to take this step and I don't know exactly where I want to take that step. And there's a lot of stuff, maybe, that feeling like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do it.
Scary. Yeah.
Right. And so that was the intention behind the brand story coaching. It's really for professionals who are going, I have this business, and like, what's the big leap? Like yourself, right? You just made that big transition from photography into this realm.
Yeah.
And looking at what's the new story there? What's the through line between the photography and the podcasting?
Yeah. There is so much to let go of, and there's guilt. There's like, I felt guilty because that's all I wanted at one point in my life. And then it was such a successful business, and I felt guilty for actually wanting more, like not necessarily more like in finances or anything like that. Like financially, it was really great and really stable, and it felt good. But like I just wanted something else, and so I felt guilty for asking for a 6-figure business, and it was it was kind of. I feel even. I almost feel guilty for saying it was easy because it was sort of easy at one point. Like I feel like I built my systems, I built a team, I had everything in place, and then it started to become easy. But even to just say I made that amount of money easily, I feel guilty for saying that.
Yeah.
But letting go of that and then making the switch into podcasting.
Right.
My husband was like, how much is podcasting going to pay you? I'm like, a bazillion, zillion, $0 is what's going to come in from podcasting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
you had this gut
I just knew,
feeling, this intuition.
Yeah,
Right.
and every year it would get stronger and stronger and stronger. And then when I'd walk into the studio, the photography studio, it was almost like, oh, I don't even want to be here. Like, I just want I want to do something else. I want to do something else. Yeah. And so finally I was like, all right, we're going all in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where ease comes from, right? I found that, and this is why I'm so passionate about tapping people into their purpose, whether it's professional or personal. I really believe that your purpose is the through line across everything you do. My personal purpose is to come home to myself as I inspire and empower others to do the same. That tracks through my coaching. That tracks through the way I interact with people. That tracks through the way I show up in the world. That tracks through how I take care of myself, how I check in with myself. It's the lens through which I look at the world and look at myself. So it's about finding that and then figuring out, what do I do with it? And I think that's why I hear you on the ease part, because I'm also in this season where it's like there's this alignment.
Yeah.
And everything feels like, oh, obstacle, it's okay. I'm in my purpose.
Okay. Yeah.
Challenge, setback. Somebody says
good.
no.
Yeah.
Somebody, things don't happen the way my ego says they're supposed to. And my purpose is like, that's okay. We're on the journey. We're going.
Yeah.
Right? And so I can imagine, like, now, once photography felt like it was out of purpose, then it got sticky. Even though everything else externally was flowing really well.
Yeah.
And then once you've moved into podcasting, I mean, I've seen it. You make it look quite easy. I know you're working really hard, right? You're like the duck, like chilling on the top, and then your legs are going on the bottom, like keeping everything going.
Yeah.
But there is a sense of, even the hard things have a sense of ease.
Yeah.
Because you're doing it for the right reasons.
It just feels so right. Like it feels like this feels so good. This feels so right. Like this in this moment is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
And whatever happens, I'm just going to like let it be. Like whatever happens in the future, I don't know, 10 years from now, 5 years, am I still podcasting? I don't know. But in this moment, I'm loving the podcasting.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So take me on some steps. What do people do to tap into, okay, when you said coming home to yourself. I absolutely love that. Yeah, I read this book. I think it's called Welcome Home.
Yeah.
It was so good.
I think we talked about that book at one
Yeah.
point. So, coming to my purpose, that is my story. That is how I got there, is through understanding that from my pain comes my purpose. So they're completely interlinked for me. Because growing up, I had my storyline, my ways of being, and it was hard. It was really challenging. I worked really intensely on healing through an eating disorder, healing through addiction, healing through, having a narcissistic parent. And throughout all of that, I heard this really loud voice saying all the things it says, like, you can't do this, you're not worthy, go back to bed, what's the point? But I also had this other really small voice that said, keep going, you are worth it. This is the work. This is what you're meant to do. And to me, that voice is home. Like that voice, that knowing that says, Savannah, you're gonna make it. You're gonna figure it out. This is all happening for you. That's what I mean when I say, like, I'm coming home to myself. And the reason I believe so fully that from my pain comes my purpose, I would not have the awareness and the understanding of that voice being my home without all that hard stuff. Like, I wouldn't have had to do the work I'm meant to do, the healing I was meant to do, if I hadn't gotten totally activated by my life, by my decisions, by my choices. And that phrase is not from me. It's from my recovery. I don't say addiction counselor. I like to say recovery counselor because words have power. And I think he counseled me into recovery and sobriety more than he counseled me on addiction. So he and I were on a Zoom long after we had worked together. So I had been sober for a while. And everything was just integrating. Everything was coming into place. And he looks at me through the Zoom screen and he says, Savannah, I have a saying, from my pain comes my purpose, from my mess comes my mission. And I was like, oh, like my whole body just settled because I believe healing and life happens in a spiral, not a straight line, right? And it's going deeper and deeper each time. So coming home to myself is just continuing in that spiral and looking back and saying, wow, that was painful. That was brutal. That was hard. I don't understand why this is happening to me. I don't know why I'm here. What am I supposed to be doing? As anyone who's experienced mental health challenges like depression and anxiety, when you're in it, you're like, what is going on? How do I do this? How do I get out of it? And you run that narrative. And you're going into this place that's really dark and really heavy. And that's the shift I had to make. Like, this is the thing that has made me who I am. When I was in recovery, being in rooms with other women who are doing the same work, coming together, it's like, oh, I learned how to hold space. I learned how to deeply listen. At 15, 16, 17, I wasn't going to parties, but I was learning how to deeply listen to another human being. Right? And then as a young adult going through sobriety, okay, I don't go out, maybe I don't drink, and I had to shift that story. But I'm doing this other thing. I'm showing up, I'm going surfing, I'm doing life in the way that feels really good to me. And I wouldn't have the clarity and the knowledge and the willingness and all of the great stuff that comes with personal development, right? Like sometimes even framing it that way. Like, man, I remember when I said it out loud to my friend, it's like, I'm just messed up enough to have gotten to go do all the things that really everybody benefits from. Like boundaries and truth-telling and speaking authentically and mindfulness and meditation and all these practices that help all of us. And it's like, well, I just did them a little early.
Yeah.
Right?
I just kind of went first from this group,
You just went first. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, tell me about you and your story on how did you tap into this whole NLP and how does that relate to you and your story?
Yeah. So all of that stuff was happening. I was working so hard and I was having that same disconnect. Like cognitively, I know this, I know I'm good, but there's something in me. And then I went to the training. It's the global NLP training. All my love and gratitude to Nikki Schneider, who's just, she's like, we called her the NLP wizard. She really just creates a space. She helped every single person in that room. And that was like, that was the next phase in the spiral for me, this deep integration between what I knew and how I felt and how I behaved and how I believed. And it was really just going all the way back and working on those last remaining, like those really powerful old stories that I've been telling myself since I was 1, 2, 3, like going all the way back there.
Wow.
And changing that narrative. On the final day, what she does is she'll do patterns. We call them patterns, so like guided visualizations. Everyone got to have a pattern from Nikki, and that's how you learn, right? You watch how it's done. And she did one that just completely, I thought my last story was shame, and my actual last story underneath that was self-doubt, was this doubt. Oh, I really want this, but do I? Do I deserve it? Am I ready for it?
It's the two sides of...
Right, exactly. And then shame was actually what would come in after to talk me out of the thing I really wanted. So I had been over here working on shame, and then Nikki was like, oh no, it's self-doubt. And I was like, oh, okay. And then we worked through this doubt in myself, and that just, she calls it like a necklace. Like once you break one, everything else just unwinds.
Like
all the stories
beads
unwinds.
just come out.
It was, yeah. And that's why I'm so passionate about all these modalities, because I think all of them are doing similar things, just they're coming at it from different ways.
Yeah.
And I was inspired to go in the first place by an Oak and Pine sister, Tiare. I had mentioned it to her, kind of, I said like, oh, I'm thinking about it, but I don't know. It's not, doing the exact, like this full self-doubt.
Doing the same thing, like, I want it, but no, and I want it, but no.
And she was like, go. And I was like, okay, I'm going.
Yeah. Do you feel like you just needed that push, or do you feel like you just needed that permission for somebody to say like, no, Savannah, you need to go?
I did before I left, I did, and now I don't. I think now it's like this very clear, this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And even as I'm looking at growing my business, and this is, I think, for people out there, what does that little voice say? Get really still, really, really still, and go below all of the ego, all of the doubt, all of the noise, and feel into that. Like, what does my home say? What does my heart say? And you can do breath work, you can do NLP, you can do EFT, you can do somatic work, you can do meditation, all of those practices that help you get below, because that voice gets really quiet. It learns to get very quiet because you're not listening to it. As you start to listen to it, it says, oh, they're listening. Okay, I'm gonna speak up even more. And that was what I had to do. And I would also recommend getting out of like your environment if you want to hear it, because we're surrounded, programming, right? We run a program. You wake up, you do the same thing, you go to the same places. Change up your routine, do something different. If you can't go on a trip, because another thing about the trip was all of the things I considered that made up Savannah. The place I lived, the activities I did, the car I drove, all of those dropped off, and then all of a sudden I'm in Mexico. And it's like, oh, what's left? And what's left is me. So if you can't go on a trip right this moment, obviously, like go to a new place you've never been to. Go somewhere where you can feel tuned into yourself rather than your environment and like what you've created, that program you've created for yourself.
I think even if you just rent a hotel room, And just get yourself in, just go alone. Even if you're by yourself, just go to a hotel room, get in the zone, and do some work that you need to get done. Every once in a while, I'll rent my own hotel room and I'll be like, I am just loving this right now. Yeah.
It's so fun. It's such a
It
great
is. You get to be with
experience.
yourself. You get the remote. You get, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you get to just really like be alone, but yet with yourself. You know, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some steps that people can take to step into NLP? Like, is there certain steps that you do, or like if they don't have access to maybe go to a conference in Mexico or something?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Let me think. Well, even gratitude journaling is part of NLP. So, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, it's using language to shift your brain's focus. So, the classic Tony Robbins one, I don't know if you've seen that video, right? You know, yeah, of course you have, right? He has everyone close their eyes and he goes, think about everything in the room that's red. Or you open your eyes, think about everything in the room that's red. Now close your eyes. What was beige? And your brain will automatically start pretending certain things were more red, right? The brain looks for things so it feels more successful. So even I did a full year of gratitude journaling. I think I started right after my birthday, maybe a year and a half ago. And it reoriented just my brain, like where my focus went, where my attention went. Another thing to bring NLP into your daily life is the word not. So we think a lot about what we don't want, what we are not going to do. I'm not going to do that today. But what happens if I say, don't think of a pink elephant?
Right.
So
That's all you do is think of a pink elephant the whole day.
Exactly. So you can bring NLP into your daily world. When you hear yourself saying not, flip it to a positive. So I don't want to do that. Then shift it to what do I want to do? Another big word is should. I should do that. Should I don't. I did it again. See, it's a good practice. I choose to use other words besides should in my day-to-day. If I hear myself saying should, that's a really good indication that there's a disconnect between your cognition and your body, your knowing. Because your brain's going, oh, I should do that. I have to. I must. That's a really good flag or an indicator to check in with yourself and go, should I though? Do I have to? What part of me thinks I should? What part of me is saying, I need to go do this thing? And then is
it your old programming telling you that you should do this?
Exactly. Oh, I should do that. And then if it's something you actually have to do, shift that word. I want to do this today.
Or I get to.
I get to.
Yeah.
I'm excited to. I'm happy to. So changing your language that you use every day, that's how you can start incorporating NLP into your world. Because whatever you speak and think, you're programming into your subconscious mind. You're repeating that over and over again. So I would say not, should, and then gratitude journaling are like top 3, super simple. You can do every day to start reprogramming. And reorienting your mind toward what you really want, what you really are meant to do, and all the things you can be really grateful for. Because that puts you in the state of mind, that puts you in the state of being, right? NLP talks a lot about state change. We learned in the training to notice when people's states would shift. So another thing to think about is if your physiology, if your state of being is low, change your state. Shift your body, shift what you're doing, because there's such a connection between the mind and the body. And we know this from all the modalities. We know this it's just knowledge, but we forget.
Yeah.
So we'll sit there going like, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why I feel so bad. And then we go,
put on music, dance, or put on your favorite
music,
song.
dance.
Yeah.
Whenever you're in, we call them unresourceful states, shame, guilt, anger, frustration, loneliness, tiredness. Address that first. Get yourself into a resourceful state. Rest your body, move your body, drink water, like all the things that we just sort of, instead of going, I'm going to just grind through this. I'm going to keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah.
I really like to walk outside and just look at the sky
Same. Yeah.
Whenever I'm
Yeah.
really activated,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I'm not going to be in a good place to get this done right now. Let me just go take a break.
Yeah.
And then usually I come back to it and it's easier.
Yeah. I get into this thing where I ask myself, like I ask my body, what do you need in this moment?
Yeah.
And there's this one time where I dropped off, this is just like maybe 2 weeks ago. I dropped off my kids at school. I came home and I thought to myself, all right, I need to ask my body, I need to check in. What do you need in this moment? And I could feel my body saying, I need more rest. I laid on my bed at like 8 in the morning and I didn't wake back up until like 10. And I was like, gosh, that felt so good. You know, just asking yourself in this moment, what do I truly need?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this other thing that I do, as you're talking about gratitude journaling and stuff. Almost every single day in my planner, I do bullet journaling now because of Steph.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I write on the top, what if? And I write everything down. Like, what if today was the most beautiful day ever? And it's just what if is on the top, but underneath it, I write present tense. You know, like I created a podcast. I brought women together, you know, or I just write everything that I feel like, what if I lived my best life? Like, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think it's just writing it down, whether you're doing it in journaling or just the
Speaking it aloud.
Speaking it. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm rereading Untamed right now.
Ooh.
And she just got to the part where she was saying, she makes the argument that your life begins in your imagination.
Yeah.
Right? And that what if is that imagining. It's going, well, what if? What if this all works out? What if I can do it?
Yeah.
What if I can create the most truthful, authentic, beautiful life I can imagine?
Exactly.
Right? We don't say the best thing you can live. We say the best thing you can imagine, because that's imagination is where you get to play.
Yeah. There's something, I don't remember what we were talking about, but you and I were talking maybe about a month or 2 months ago. And I remember I said something to you and you had said, wait, Mapu, stop. You're like, if you have to also tell me the other side of it, because it's 50-50.
Ooh.
And and all I remember you telling me, I don't even remember what I was trying to talk to you about, but I just remember you telling me that you're like, everything is 50-50. So if you are going to say that this could happen, then what's the flip side of that? Then this also could happen.
Right.
Everything's 50-50. Like you talk about like, well, the worst thing that can happen, well, then you also have to tell me the best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all the running the program, writing the story. That's why my tagline for my business, it's not change your story, transform your life. It's choose your story. Because it's a choice. I get to choose the story I tell every single day. I get to choose the story I tell about my recovery, my sobriety, my business, my life, what it all means, because there's an infinite number of stories. I think we get very caught in this idea like, no, that's reality. And it's like, no, reality is what you are choosing to see. It's what you decide it is. So you can choose. And again, exactly, like if you're going to choose to go with the negative, we got to at least like reel it in and open up the possibility for the flip side of it. What's the opposite of that?
Because it's 50-50. Yeah. Yeah. First, I don't know. I don't even remember why. I just remembered that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to keep that with me for forever.
I can't remember because we've had a couple conversations.
Yeah. So but just, I remember I walked away with that and I was just like, oh, that is so true and so powerful at the same time. Yeah. And also I've heard the words you speak is the house you live.
I wrote that down when you told me.
Yes, right?
Yeah. That one.
Yeah.
I actually had another coach tell me that too recently.
Because the words coming out of your mouth, that's the house you're going to live in, basically.
And that's another thing to catch yourself with, is to just start listening, because so much of the old story is innate. I mean, I would catch myself so often going to just running the same story over and over again. And you run it so many times, it is subconscious. You don't even hear it. So journaling it out, part of what I would do is I would write out what I was thinking, and then it helps me see it on paper. And a lot of times I'd go like, oh man, that's not helpful. That's not what I really want to feel. And then just continuously catching yourself in those moments, and then changing it, flipping it.
Is that why you could have two kids who grew up in the exact same house and they have completely two different stories of their childhood.
Yeah. Because, and there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
There's what is useful and what is not useful. That's why we don't say like negative emotions and positive emotions.
Yeah.
It's resourceful emotions and unresourceful emotions.
Yeah.
So even thinking that through, right? Instead of going like, I feel shame and that's bad, it's I feel shame and that's making me less resourceful. So what do I need to work on with the shame? And the shame usually gets triggered by a should. So you go, I should, and then you feel shame, and then you're less resourceful to do the thing. You're not able to do that thing because then you're stuck in the shame spiral.
Yeah. Stop shoulding.
Exactly. So then that's where you check in. You go, should I do that? Okay, I really should do that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go do it, but now I'm going to make it a want. And
Yeah.
that's going to put me into a more resourceful state. Or you check in and you realize, no, that's made up. That's a story I'm telling myself. And I'm going to write a different story. And I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah.
Right?
And then just let it be. Just without any attachment to it.
Right.
Yeah.
And each step, I think of it like a domino effect.
Yeah.
So catching any of those dominoes and then keeping them from, right? Because we've all been in that. Like one thing happens and then you're like, oh, and then you keep going down. You can also stop it and then bring yourself back up.
Yeah.
Through the language, through your body, and through the words that you're saying.
And stopping is like pulling out one of those dominoes so it doesn't continue. You're like, let me just slide this one out.
Yeah, let me just play a different game.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Talk me about what you do and how do you help business owners or like what type of people do you help?
So on the brand story side, it's really focusing on business owners. There's kind of two parts. Okay. So entrepreneurs, really entrepreneurs like yourself, they're going through some sort of transition. They go, oh, I actually really want to pivot my business, but I don't have the language or the story to tell around that. And I have a background in marketing and English. So I support also with the technical side of like actually writing it or updating your website. So it's this balance between the one-to-one coaching and then technical support as well. I'm still figuring it out, but like I said, the shared thread is the meaningful change. One person I'm starting work with, she really wants to write a book. But again, she's got the want, I really want to write this book, but there's certain things where things are, and using NLP to support with that, and then using storytelling to actually support her in writing the book. So writing a book, public speaking, when entrepreneurs, I think a lot of confidence building on what's the story I want to show up and be ready to tell. When I walk into a room, when I jump onto Instagram, when I go onto LinkedIn, when I host a workshop, when I'm in any sort of environment where you need to be really clear, confident, and aligned on your marketing messaging is where I can support there. And then the other side is teams. What's the shared purpose, vision, mission of our team? A lot of times employees will come in and they don't necessarily, especially with all the remote work now, there's not that same level of we're all on the same track. So looking at hosting workshops, leading group workshops where teams can come together and say, oh, okay, you actually are really in alignment with me. We're really in alignment. And then we're really in alignment with the brand's purpose, vision, mission as well. And then the personal side, personal story coaching is really more just personal coaching on the big ones. People who I don't work with people who are actively getting sober because that's therapy, that's counseling. But people, in that, because I've been there, that 6 to 12 month mark where you're going, I did this super, super hard thing. I got sober, but now what? I still don't.
What's next?
Right? Because that thing that gave you purpose, that thing that really fulfilled a need, because all addictions are just a need you're trying to fulfill sideways, is how I think of it. You don't have that, but then that leaves this sort of space. So it's like, oh, who am I now? What's my new story without this? What's my new story with sobriety? What's my new story with recovery? What's my new story with a new home? What's my new story with moving to a new place? What's my new story with a new career, a new relationship, or releasing an old relationship? Any of those really big transition points. NLP is great at that because NLP can facilitate that rewriting of that old story, because the old story is what keeps you from moving.
Do you feel like you definitely need a new story? Because if not, it's so easy to just, maybe you've gone through therapy and did the work, but if you don't have a new story that you're working towards, it'll be so easy to just drop back into your old story because it's so familiar.
I think you create the new story through the process. And there's no, like when I went to do the training, I had no expectation to have this much of an integration that quickly. So I was working really hard on my new story. So I would say, yes, I think you need to have something you're looking toward. I think it's really important, an exercise that I did right when I got back that I encourage people to do is that I got from a coach who's also done NLP and all those fun things. She had us write the best year of our life.
So it's like, what if?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's what if, it's getting that familiar feeling. It's
Yeah.
everything. It's Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's
Tony Robbins.
It's Tony Robbins.
Oprah.
It's
whatever.
all of it. It's all of it. We're all saying the same amazing things, but just our voices all add a different piece to it, for sure. So sit down and write the best year of your life. So I don't know what today's date is. Sometime in September 2024. Pretend it's September 2025. Look back at everything you did. What is the best, most joyful, most true version of myself? How did I behave? Who was in my life? What boundaries did I set? What things did I go after? What things did I say no thank you to? What was that best year? And then again, that ease comes in because it's, oh, I'm just going for that. The unknown is a really scary place to be in. When we stay in the unknown, we don't want to move. We don't want to move toward the unknown. So if you give your brain, that's another pattern we learned is the anxiety pattern. So anxiety is just your brain making up stories because it doesn't know enough information, right? If you think about it, anxiety can only live in the future. So if you go past that moment of anxiety and you look back on it instead, you can learn a lot. You can say, oh, that really crazy thing there, I thought I was going to die. Like public speaking is a huge one.
Right? Yeah.
So you would actually, with NLP, you'd have somebody imagine the day after doing the public speaking event and go, what happened? And even if they messed up, even if their imagination goes like, oh, you really messed up, you look dumb, you can be like, yeah.
Oh, well, I got that
and
one
I
in the
survived.
books. Yeah.
I lived. I survived. So that's another thing I think that can really help. It helped me a lot to find what am I working toward? What am I moving toward? And just create it. Again, I just chose something. It doesn't mean it aligned exactly. The best year of my life, whatever I write, it's not set in stone. It's just to give myself something to move toward.
And you can change it at any time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to talk about being in the gap. So being in the gap between those two stories.
Yeah.
Because there's sometimes, I feel like for me, I enter the gap. I've entered it a few times in my life. I feel like I'm out of the gap because I'm finally podcasting. But then I feel myself, because I know what's next for me. And next is I want to have like a dinner with an audience. Oh, I don't know, maybe we'll cut that out, that part. I know what I want next. So then I achieve my goals and then I enter the gap again. But I think once I know that I'm in the gap, I have tools on what to do and how to move forward and kind of like what's next for me. Like, like I know I'm going to write all this stuff down. I know how to align myself. I do breath work. I do all these things to just get myself like, okay, I'm going to get out of this gap. I know that this gap is for a period of time. I will get in it and then I will work forward to moving into the next.
Yeah. So the gap, I call it the messy middle.
Okay.
The gap is rough. I was in the gap, and the gap is...
Is it when you can't make a decision? Like, is that
Mm.
the gap? Sometimes you're like, is it this? Is it that? Do I stay in as a photographer? Do I move on to podcasting? Like, is it when you're in
Mm.
that moment where it's like you're on two crossroads. Do I take a
Yeah.
right or do I take a left?
Yeah, I think when I say I'm helping people bridge the gap, it's the gap between what you're doing and who you are right now and who you're ready to be and what you're ready to create next. And it's the gap is the lack of action.
Mm.
The gap is the
Lack of decision making.
lack of decision making.
Okay.
It's the saying, I want this, but then not doing
Mm-hmm.
something toward
Mm-hmm.
that.
So then you sit in the gap longer.
You sit in the gap longer, but you can learn a lot in the gap. And the gap is where it gets sticky, it gets uncomfortable. And I've been in the gap so many times.
Yeah.
Right, with recovery from the disordered eating behaviors, I would go, "Oh my God, I did it again. I did that thing.
Mm-hmm.
What is this? Why am I doing
But
it?"
then you catch yourself.
But then you catch yourself, you learn, and I think what it is to embrace the gap.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I think it is really to embrace the gap, go like, this is foreign, this is unknown, this
Mm-hmm.
is the uncomfortable, this is the messy part, this is the pain that gets me to my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you bridge the gap. And then you can get support with whatever else is there. But I
It's
think,
like I think of it like a lake. Like in order to get to the other side of the lake, you need
yeah,
to
you
get in the lake and get through it. So it's like getting through the lake.
gotta
It's
get cold.
messy, it's cold. You don't like it, your shoes are wet, and it's
Yeah.
like, how long am I going to be here? But then once you get to the other side, like, okay.
Yeah.
But when you're ready for your next shift, you'll enter the gap again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The gap is where you face whatever's coming up.
Yeah.
The gap is where you say, oh, I gotta go work on that now. Oh, this is coming up. Oh, this is now what I'm being called to activate next. This is the thing that I need to work through.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to love the gap, but you can honor that gap.
Mm-hmm.
You can honor yourself in it instead of, again, going into shame, going
Right.
into that
Yeah.
unresourced. Why am I
Yeah.
in the gap? Gosh darn it, I'm in the gap again.
Yeah.
What the heck is wrong with me?
But it's part of your growth. It's
Yeah.
part of your personal growth. And just know you will always enter a gap on your next level up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time. There's got to be
Yeah.
this down part.
Yeah.
My counselor, he's just awesome, and he was very big on, like, if you did drink again, he called it doing research. So you'd come in and you'd be like, shoot, I did the thing I said I really didn't want to do. I don't know why. And he's like, yeah, you're just doing research.
Yeah.
And it was such a gift because, like, yes, in some circumstances, that's a really big deal. In my case, for me, sobriety was not like a life or death thing. Sobriety was a quality of life thing. You know what I mean? Like, it was more just, so I'm not speaking on like on behalf of everyone, just my personal experience there. But for me, when I came in, and he'd be like, you did more research. And I did, because each time I went back into that unknowing and back to that old way of being, I learned something new.
Yeah.
And then one day, unexpected, I think that's the other thing, is like, stop trying to decide when you're going to get out of the gap.
Yeah.
Like, my sobriety moment came completely unexpectedly. I was sitting there, I had done some research, and I wasn't feeling very good. I was like, what am I doing? And I looked up at the full moon, and this voice just said, okay, hon, you're done now.
Yeah.
It's time. And I haven't had, like, it just went away. It was like, this thing is not, it didn't go away. It still comes, but that steadiness, like, I bridged the gap. I swam through the lake and I got to the other side, but it didn't happen on my timeline. And it's not going to happen on our timeline, because that's ego. Ego is going, oh, it has to happen right now, and this is how it has to be, and this is the way it needs to look. But your soul, your heart, your knowing, your home, whatever you want to call it,
Your now, whatever.
your now, it's like, no,
Yeah.
still doing research. we still got to
Yeah.
figure it out. Even I imagine with your photography, like
Oh
you'd go
gosh.
back in, you'd like
Yes.
come and go. And it's like, I think that's just such a fun phrase for
Yeah.
whenever you find yourself going back
Dipping
to your
back
old
in, you're like,
ways.
okay, research
You're like,
time.
I'm doing more research. I needed to learn something more. And you did.
Yeah,
And like,
totally.
again, you choose that story. Is the story like, oh, I failed, oh, I made a mistake? Or is the story, oh, I needed to go back and learn something
Yeah.
new?
But then it's also giving you, I feel like every time I went back to photography, even though I knew I didn't want to, it's almost like my guides, myself, whatever you want to call it, it was telling me like, I'm gonna put this in front of you and let me see how much you really want it and how much you
Ugh.
don't want it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, I was like, oh, okay, let me do it, let me do it, let me do it. And then like I was like, what am I doing? I don't even want to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly.
And then when I started to say no,
Mm-hmm.
like a couple things would come up for me, like the shame, the guilt,
Mm-hmm.
those things would come up. But also I thought to myself, what do I want more? Do I want to just do it because the people pleasing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, do I want to just do it to people please, or do I just, am I done? Is
Mm-hmm.
this testing me to see how bad I want this something else?
Mm-hmm.
And the more I said no, the easier it got.
Yeah.
The first couple of times it was just like, especially people would be like, I'll pay you double, I'll do this, I'll do that. And I'm like, no, I'm just not even doing it
They're just
anymore.
calling you and they're like, come back to
I know.
us. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But you committed to yourself first.
Yeah.
You said, this
Yeah.
is what I'm
This
doing
is what
now.
I want. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's just part of the journey. And
Yeah.
before that, you probably said yes a bunch of times when
I
you
did.
wish you'd said no.
Yeah. And then when I got there to do the photo shoot, I was like, what the shit? Why? Why did I say yes to
You're like,
this?
damn it. I don't like this research anymore.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. I don't like this
I
research
don't need to do it
anymore.
anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just testing you. How bad do you really want it?
Yeah.
But it's giving you an opportunity to practice. They say something like, it's giving you the opportunity to practice
Mm-hmm.
to be the person you say you are.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you want to be that person, you have to drop the old person.
Yeah.
And that takes time. It doesn't just happen overnight. That's why I'm so like not into New Year's resolutions.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not gonna become somebody else
On
on
January
midnight.
1st. Yeah.
Like I'm gonna become somebody else
Cinderella.
whenever my soul is ready to do a
Yeah.
shift, that's when
Yeah.
I'm gonna become someone
Yeah.
else. It's not
I
gonna
do it on
happen.
my birthday. I give myself the full year. And so like this year I turned 50. I'm like, all right, 50, what do we have in store
Yeah.
for 50?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh, I
and I
love
just kind of
that.
like make my plan. So I go every birthday year, but it's not like really New Year's resolutions. It's more like, what do I want?
Yeah, it's a new season.
Yeah, a new season.
I'm big on seasons. Like
Yeah.
what season am I in? What am
Oh,
I
yeah.
moving into?
Yeah. Because there's also a winter season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in
Exactly.
winter for a bit.
Mhm.
Yeah, but finally, I'm in summer without my bikini. I'm like,
living our
just
best
in summer.
Yeah, and knowing that you're in your summer, and then to me it's a practice of staying centered even when that good season comes or when the low season comes. Because
Yeah.
the more I attach to the negative and the positive, I'm still getting pulled. And I'm still attaching. I'm still thinking that I have anything to do with it. And I don't. It's life. It's moving. It's what's coming forth, what's happening in that season. So staying centered and aligned as you're moving through the seasons and not going like, oh, this season's really great and that means something about me. Or this season's really bad and that means something about me. This season is what it is and this season's what it is. And they don't mean anything about me. I'm just going to be myself in these seasons. And I'm going to choose how I feel about myself regardless.
I think even when you're in the good season, just know that that also ends.
Yeah,
You know? Yeah, winter ends, summer ends. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. So if someone wants to work with you or they're ready to like work on their story, how do they get in touch with you, or what are some of the things that they can do?
Yeah. So I offer 60-minute consultations, discovery calls, however you want to phrase that. And in that 1 hour together, we'll talk about what new story you're ready to bring to life and what old stories you are looking to shift. So in that first session, we've done a session together. You'll walk away with the beginnings of a purpose, vision, mission statement. You'll walk away with a really fun exercise I do, which is a values elicitation, and with just a deeper understanding of whether you're in the season, to shift that story. And if you're like, oh, maybe not, or if you're like, yes, absolutely, then we would work together in a 3, 6, or 12-month capacity. And the 3-month is really if there's one specific story or one specific project. Like you're going, oh, there's this one thing I really want to work on, or this one. I recently worked with a woman, and she really wanted writing support on a TED Talk, right? So that would be a great container. 6 months or 12 months is you're looking to rewrite multiple stories. You know there's things to work on in the personal coaching. And then in the brand story coaching, that would be a longer container for something like a book, a business shift, a big pivot, some major thing, or you're just wanting a more full integration on the personal side with a big transition or a big shift that you're making. And if you'd like to book that, you can go to my website, savannahLani.com, or you can check out my Instagram. Brand new Instagram. Thank you, NLP. I'm back on Instagram thanks to NLP, because I found Instagram to be so unfun, and I had all these stories around it, and now I've rewritten all the stories, and I'm like, I'm on Instagram again, guys.
No, I remember I was talking to you, and you're like, I'm taking a break. I was like, oh, what? You're like, yeah. And then you're like, oh, no, I'm back. I was like, okay, Savannah, welcome back.
I took a break. I went to Mexico, and now I'm back on Instagram.
Oh, yeah. Well, you just changed so much just coming back from Mexico. Like, yeah, it's crazy. It's
really fun.
Wild fun, and I love seeing all the changes in you.
Yeah, thank you. I love being here. I love being in this space. I see just every piece. This is the fun. I'm in the fun summer season as well, of the hindsight and looking back at, oh my gosh, if this hadn't happened, then this wouldn't happen, and then this happened so that this could happen, and then this brought on this, and this happened here, and it's, whoa. You know?
And look now.
Yeah. Look now, we're here in your studio.
Yeah.
Talking together. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Please like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. I would love to hear from you. Thanks so much. See you in the next episode.